Welcome to episode 2 of Translated's adventure in the Ocean Globe Race. My name is Paul Cayard, and I'll be your host every Friday as we follow Marco and the Translated team in their adventure around the planet. I'm here in my home office today in La Jolla, California, appreciating the sunshine and the warm weather, thinking about Marco and the team out on day 3 in the North Atlantic. I'm sure they're having a lot of fun, but I'm sure they're a little wetter than I am. Translated 9, you may be asking yourself, why is Translated 9 a company that's an IT company that's involved in translating content on the web? Why are they doing the Ocean Globe Race? Well, Marco and Isabel really believe that progress is made by those who venture out of their comfort zone. And in doing the Ocean Globe Race, they found a metaphor for their belief. Obviously, attempting to sail around the world is an extremely high bar and challenging for even seasoned sailors. But Marco and Isabel really hadn't sailed at all 4 years ago. So their mantra is, we believe in humans. And there really is nothing more human than sailing around the world with a group of 10 people on board a boat, 37,000 miles around the planet, doing it 1 mile at a time. Each week, we're going to review the progress the boat has made in the previous 3 or 4 days prior to the episode. I use the Ocean Globe Tracker to review that. You can go yourself to oceangloberace.com/live tracker and see the progress the boat's making and the competition is making at any point in time. So now I'm going to go to the tracker and show you what's happened since the start on Sunday. Sunday was a huge day. Starting an adventure like sailing around the world is very emotional, and leaving the family behind can be quite a dramatic situation. I remember clearly that case for me in 1997. Not even sure if I would really ever see my family again. So the fleet is bunched up here in Southampton, getting ready to dock out and get down to Cowes and start the race. Here we see them all milling around the starting area, and this is the early hours of the race. There was a south westerly wind, not too strong, so that's why you see the boats zigzagging back and forth, because they're tacking as they're making their way down the direction of the course, which is identified by the rum line here, the red line. And the fleet splits because, again, the wind is coming directly from where they're trying to go. So let's just talk a little bit about what life on board is like in those first 10, 12 hours of an around the world race. There's a lot of excitement, a lot of emotion, but business would be getting into the watch system right away, getting half the crew to rest so that at night, that first night, we're still being efficient and productive in sailing the boat. It's kind of like getting over jet lag, though. It's super hard to get into that watch system and go downstairs and go to bed at 4 p.m., but you just kind of have to force yourself to do it. Also, they're getting the meal program going, so probably they probably had sandwiches they brought food for the first lunch, so to speak, but at 6 p.m., someone would have been putting the water on and cooking that first freeze-dried meal. Fortunately for them, even though they're going upwind, it's not too windy, so the boat's not bouncing around a lot, and life isn't too uncomfortable on board the boat. So moving the tracker along kind of early morning on Monday, kind of heading into day 2, we see them still making their way southwest, tacking a bit, but the wind is starting to go to the right here, and they're able to hold on one tack. It's starboard tack. And but we see the first tactical choices being made. This group down here is heading towards France, the northwest corner of France. And meanwhile, this other larger pack has invested in the west. And that's because they believe that the next wind system will be coming from the west and bringing more favorable winds out on the western edge. The fleet here is split by about 80 miles. And so an 80-mile split will pay whichever group is right quite handsomely. So let's move on a little more here and see how this plays out, probably in the evening of Monday. And yes, we see here that the group that went to France got hung up on the corner of France, and some of them even had to tack, which is horrible, while this outside group is just ripping along on starboard jibe. We also see that this outside group is led by Translated 9, Marco and the gang, and Penduik 6 is with them, Maiden is with them, and there's another boat tucked in here called the Spirit of Helsinki. So this 4-pack is leading the group. What's going to happen now is that the wind is going to the right a little bit more, and we get what we call following winds. That means the boats are going downwind, and that gets even more comfortable. So now we're in the early hours of Tuesday, and the fleet's making their way across the Bay of Biscay in about the best conditions you can get. The Bay of Biscay can be very rough. That's this big bay here on the west side of France and the north coast of Spain. This piece of water here can be extremely rough, but fortunately for the fleet, they're going downwind. And we know that because what we'll see here is some of these western boats zig to the east because the wind has shifted into the northeast. And in fact, here goes Maiden, and soon thereafter, Translated and Spirit of Helsinki are all jibing. And that's where we are Wednesday evening, 3 days into leg 1. So while the boats have been tacking up wind in that first 24-hour period, the good news for them is it wasn't too windy. I've started many legs where you come out of the starting and it's blowing 30 knots and you got to go upwind, and that's a super rough way to start a leg because there's a lot going on there. You're trying to get into your watch systems, which are a bit unnatural. People should go down and rest in that first day during the daytime, and you don't feel like sleeping. But if you don't get your rest during the daytime, you won't be any good at night. And it's kind of like getting over jet lag. You know, everybody has a little bit of trouble in the first 48 hours, getting into that watch system, getting good rest, eating meals. So the good news again was it wasn't that windy while they went upwind and had to tack a bit in the first 24 hours. In this segment, I want to review what we anticipate the weather being for the fleet as they go through the next 3 or 4 days down the course towards the Canary Islands in this case. I use a tool called Predict Wind for running both the weather and the performance of the boat into an integrated tool called a router. And the router uses the weather and the performance of the boat to suggest an optimal route for the boat to take in getting from point A to point B. So in this case here, we have point A being where the fleet is tonight on Wednesday night, September 13th. And I picked a point down about 20 degrees north, a good entry point for the equator and the doldrums. It's way more than a week of sailing for this fleet. So let's say it's out far enough for the router to do its work. And what we see here from point A, let's say down to these islands right here, this is Madeira. It's a distance of about 750 miles. It'll take the fleet 3 to 4 days to get down this far. And currently they're experiencing nice northeasterly winds, so they're going downwind, smooth sailing, comfortable on board, and making good progress. In about 24 hours from now, They'll be down in this region here. The winds will be getting lighter. This zone through the middle here is known as a high pressure ridge. There's high pressure here. There's the Azores high pressure, and there's a ridging of high pressure through here. Anywhere we have high pressure like this, it's very light winds. Fortunately, the fleet will be able to continue making progress by staying just east and south of this ridge line. Again, I expect them to be here when this weather is in effect. And we see this really big feature coming here. This is a low pressure system back up towards England, and it's kicking down some 30-knot northerly winds that may eventually touch the fleet. And in fact, they do 2 days from now. So this will be Friday or Saturday morning, September 16th. And the fleet will be getting close to Madeira, and they'll be enjoying strong northwesterly winds, again, making great progress. Moving on down, fortunately for the fleet, they will be long past Lisbon here. This would be a bad place to be this coming Saturday or Sunday. But the fleet should be down here past Madeira, enjoying, again, the nice winds as they approach the Canary Islands here. So all in all, it looks like a great exit from England for the fleet. Favorable winds the whole way and fairly decent winds. So they'll be doing 180 miles a day, pretty much right on course. So that's a wrap on episode 2. It was a great start, bit emotional as they always are, but favorable wind conditions allowed the fleet to get away from England rather quickly. Also, the trailing winds provided a pretty mild sea. So I think they got into the watch systems, the food systems, all the routines that are necessary on the boat in about as painless a way as possible. And I look forward to being with you next Friday for episode 3. We'll review the previous 7 days. We'll look out ahead 7 days and see what's in store for the whole fleet, and especially Marco and the translated team. So in the meantime, let's remember, we all need to believe in humans.